Welcome to the London Horror Movie Club. I'm horror writer Lauren Jane Barnett.
And I'm Chris Sapikowski, Lauren's older brother, and I've been watching horror movies since I was 8.
Join us as we talk about the wild, weird, and wonderful horror films set in England's eerie capital.
Welcome back, horror fans. We have a ghoulish treat for you this month, especially if you love your blood and guts. A special effects makeup artist. You can see his work in films like Horoscopes, Bogeyville, Burnt Flowers, the Tis anthologies, Vidoeshop Tales of Terror 1 and 2, and he's even had a hand in the much anticipated Pinnochio Unleashed. He's an absolutely fabulous makeup artist, but also, and hopefully we'll get to this, a very good writer as well. Welcome, Alex Jents.
Hello people, hello everyone.
Hey, so Alex, you and I met on the set of Vidoeshop 2 and Mosaic pickups, and you did some fantastic slashes into my chest. They were beautiful. I wanted to start by asking, how did you end up on that shoot? How did this come to be?
I've just been very lucky. I left my old job, started training for makeup, and ended up we needed a bigger house because we had lived 3 cats, 2 humans, and way too much tat and memorabilia and things like that in a little flat. We moved to Southend, and I accidentally made contact with the film director, and it all just grew from there because Southend and Essex and Kent have such a fantastic community of filmmakers, all of whom are working on a ridiculously small budget but have bags of enthusiasm. And so I was just fortunate enough to start working with Alex Churchyard, and it was just fortuitous, really. I've met lots of really fantastic filmmakers who are just generous enough to let me prat around on their sets, really. So it's it's just like, do you want this like minorly gory or majorly gory? We'll let you do it, right? Majorly, right? It's like, I always go a bit overcook it, but there we go. That's just me.
Hey, you can always ease off on it if you need to. So that's one way to look at it.
I always carry a lot of wipes with me, if not just to clean up the actors afterwards, to try and just because like everybody's like going, this stuff won't come off. Yeah, just rub harder.
What made you start going into makeup and effects? Like what drew you to that?
It was kind of about when I was must have been 5 or 6 years old. This is a memory from back then. I was standing outside a model shop, so toy shop, models, things like that, and they had Star Wars action figures in the window, and I fell in love. From that point, and I wanted to do that. It was something that I wanted to pursue, but I was discouraged by some wise words from somebody who worked in the industry about how crazy and difficult it was to do. But then years later, I thought I'd better grab an opportunity while I can. I turned 40, and I thought, well, I've got about another 20, 25 years to build a career. So let's start all over again and build a new career. And I've just been very, very fortunate to work with some generous filmmakers who are, willing to let a lunatic loose on the set. Well, another lunatic loose on the set. So that was it. So yeah, but it was always there in the back of my mind. The love of science fiction, love of horror. When I was a kid, I was one of those Greek, Roman, Egyptian mythology nerds who sort of had memorized half the stories and things like that. All not from the original Greek or whatever, but and it was just always there. I just love the strange, love the weird, the wonderful, the macabre, and so I kind of fell back into it.
Because you fell in love with it at such a young age, were you watching movies or excited about movies to see the special effects side of it? Was that something that drew you? What kind of movies did you love?
One of the first films that I remember going to see at the cinema was Clash of the Titans, the original Ray Harryhausen, and I loved the Ray Harryhausen work. I used to watch all the Sinbad movies and everything like that. My parents were driven bananas because it was sort of like going to the cinema to me was always such a huge deal. I was nagging them to do that from a very young age. I also ended up, I've looked at the dates when the releases were. I always thought that Clash of the Titans was the first movie I saw at the cinema. If the UK release dates are the same as they were in the States, actually the first one I saw was The Black Hole, the wonderful Disney movie that is as pitch black in some places as it goes. The whole basically Event Horizon done by Disney. And so because there was the whole thing where Anthony Perkins, sorry, spoilers here, guys. Anthony Perkins gets killed by the floating robot in Black Hole, and I scared everything out of me.
There's been way worse curses on this
Yeah,
show, don't worry.
so that and then the end bit, which I kind of saw from an odd perspective, because it's like, Mom, I need the loo, and my mum's going, oh, for God's sake, we're just getting to the end of this, getting to the big denouement. And yes, so there's that very strange ending. So yeah, it was always, films were always a huge part of my life. I was very lucky to have a filmmaker who was a close friend of my mum's and my dad, and he was making horror movies, and so I was sort of hearing sort of half stories about what was going on those, because some of them are pretty icky, and really not for kids to be talked about. But he was always Norman always encouraged me to watch films, and so yeah, I was hooked on sci-fi. I was hooked on special effects. I remember when Tron came out and just absolutely going bananas over the incredible light cycles and things like that. So heavy imagination has always been a big part of what I'm looking for. And yeah, so movies were such a huge part for me. So yeah, biggest treat of the year was, you got to choose the movie you saw on your birthday. So
That was so. So did you at least have a good birthday month where you had like good movies coming out? 'Cause you'd hate to
August,
be like August and it's like
August
oh
is pretty good to be, because I'm pretty sure Clash came out then. But even if it hadn't come out then, I was somewhere, maybe it might have survived. I had like a poster book thing that came out with it. That's when films used to do that, and it had like a breakdown of the characters in it, and it opened up into the
wow.
post with the sort of Harry Hamlin and the Pegasus and the big Gorgon in the background and everything like that. And I was just over the moon. I thought every film had that. And of course, no, they didn't. I was like, "Can we get the souvenir booklet for this?" And they don't do one. It's not that kind of movie. And all right. So yeah, that's when the whole collecting bug kicked in as well, because it's like, oh, I've got to get something to remember this wonderful film by. Of course, in those days, you had to wait till it came up on TV again, rather than it being shunted onto Blu-ray in about 2 weeks after its initial release.
Right.
But yeah,
Makes it easier.
How does your Blu-ray collection look today?
healthy. Oh, hello.
Healthy.
Edgar's coming in to say hello. Sorry, this is Edgar Alfred. Hey, hello, Egg.
You are a handsome cat, Edgar.
He is one of our 6 handsome dudes, or handsome cats. He's 3 dudes, 3 girls.
Aww.
And he will just insist on being part of the whole thing.
Excellent. I mean, a black cat as well. It's on theme, so.
Yeah.
Well, we just can't. Oh, there we go. You're gonna go. There we go. Let's get down now. When you have 6 cats in the household, somebody's going to want to get in on the act at some point. Yeah, sorry, I've completely lost my own thread there.
We're talking about your Blu-ray collection.
Blu-ray collection. It's very healthy, or unhealthy if you consider my bank balance. I am a sucker for the special editions, and I do have multiple copies of some films. For Steelbook special editions, it's got another booklet with it. It's got a different commentary by a different film historian, and so that's It kind of takes up one wall of our dining room. It does include my wife's non-horror choices, but yes, it's a very. I am
You're like,
arrow. But yeah, some of those titles they're not coming down when I'm home alone. I can tell you that. But there's a lot of films up there, and I really think that people are missing out when they sort of go, oh, I can just stream it, and it's like, yeah, but you won't always be available to stream, and there's something. I'm the same with books, as you can probably see behind us. I feel a connection with the artist by owning and enjoying a piece of their work. So I think that actually having that work and keeping it with you and moving it from house to house with you or whatever you're doing, to me, it's important. I really feel that I'm making the connect. It's my little contribution to their retirement fund, and it's just sort of, it's like when I hate crashing out of books. I want to finish a book because if somebody spent that many hours and that much dedication of time, I feel it's only right that I put some effort into it. Doesn't always work, and boy, I've slogged through some bad stuff, but there are things that I just feel it's they've invested their time, they've created something, they've used their imagination and things like that, and I just think, yes, I'm going to make the effort. But yes, films, we've got a wall full. Do we watch them all the time? No, of course we don't. We just do what everybody else who watches on streaming. But it's nice to have them there.
You have the option. Yeah, you can always go and be like, you know what? Let's watch this one.
Yeah. I mean, weirdly, I ended up watching John Carpenter's Escape from LA again the other night, and I remember first seeing that, and I didn't like it because it was the early days of CGI, and some of the effects in that weren't as polished, and it was just sort of. But I watched it again. It must be about the third or fourth time, so it can't be that bad. And I got it. There was something about all the cameos and the silly ideas and the satire that was behind that came in behind it. And I think once you realise that it is a kind of a horror comedy, but there's a lot of satire in there, then you sort of go, yeah, I get it. I can see what they're trying to do there.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Do you have any Holy Grail ones that you really would like to have, but are either very hard to find or limited prints or?
Always. There's things. I mean, blessed be they're releasing Dark City on Blue Arrow. Thank you, Arrow, on Blue and 4K. But I don't have a 4K, so I'm going to save myself a tenner. Dark City, I remember from back in the 90s when, I mean, Rufus Sewell still looks ridiculously handsome today, bastard. Jennifer Connelly looking just the most incredible femme fatale figure. So yeah, that as soon as I saw that came up, it was like, yep, it's going on my list. I'd like to get a really good edition of The Long Kiss Goodnight, because that's another. I came up sort of I know they've released it on 4K, but they've not done a beautiful edition for Blu-ray, and I'm like, I can't quite justify the extra money for that, considering I can't play it. But yeah, there's all sorts of great horror movies that I'd love to get my hands on. But people like Shameless, they've done some really good jobs. 101's done some really good jobs. They've dragged out of obscurity some great movies. Michael Suave's stuff, like The Church and things like that. I remember seeing that at the Festival of Fantastic Films up in Manchester back in 1992, 93, something like that, and being just blown away by the over-the-top craziness and surrealness of it. And that was something I loved. And as soon as that came out, I was like, yep, getting that. And what the hell, I'll get The Sect, and I'll get Cemetery Man, and I'll get... even films I didn't really have a great understanding of it or knowledge experience of. I was just like, yeah, if he did a really good one with the church, let's go for it. And just, it's money I can earn, as my father would say.
Fine, I like that.
It's just like, what the hell? I'm here once. I'm going to damn well enjoy it, and if it means I've got, a whole load of movies to get around to watching at some point, yeah.
There are worse things, for sure.
Exactly. There's worse things to spend your money on. There's things that go up your nose and you don't get them back. You don't get more fun out of them than that. So, I was very fortunate. I'm an inveterate pre-orderer, if there is such a verb, or adjective. I got the Arrow did a beautiful re-release of the 1970s Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is a awesome, wonderful movie. And part of the reason I was so quick off the blocks with that is because Norman J. Warren did a commentary on it, and he was like the huge influence on my life growing up. And I just thought, wow, because I know he introduced me to the original Invasion, and then later on I thought, how can you do better than the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers? Like, oh, okay, Philip Kaufman can. Because he took it in that different direction, and of course it's that lovely 1970s paranoia feel to it. And yeah, I love things like that. It's that era is a great era for imagination and just coming up with different takes on things, because I suppose people were questioning things more then, and so it was darker, weirder. Maybe we'll look back on this era as being dark and strange in 40, 50 years' time, but we
Gotta
shall
make
have
sure
to
we
see.
make those movies.
Yes, indeed. Yes, we've got to make the strange movies. We've got to make the let the crazy ideas out and be on show. I don't why we don't have to keep going down the same mainstream things, and certainly reboots and things like that. It's there's people out there writing original ideas. Run with them.
Yeah. That leads me to a question. I'm going to jump forward because Lauren said that you're working on Pinocchio.
I worked on. I was helping out with Pinocchio. I forget which one it is now. Unleashed or Unchained?
Yeah, Unleashed.
Unleashed. Yeah, because I know there's two going on at the same time. Yeah, helped out with that for a bit. Which they've got some interesting ideas going on with that. A very different take on Pinocchio. I can't say too much about it because I'm on, but yeah, it was it's good fun. I mean, I love the idea of sort of going back to the dark roots of fairy tales and a lot of what is considered children's literature. And when you go back and you read things like the original Grimm's, you look at things like the Tales of 1001 Nights and things like that they've got a real darkness beneath them. And obviously that's rich for mining in horror movies. It's just, it's nice when people sort of go back and remember. I suppose it kind of happens in generations. And it's nice that people are doing that. I don't know why it just suddenly came to me. Could you do a horror Moby Dick or something like that? That would be why not? It's it's just so there's lots of fun things going on there. I mean, I'm very fortunate that this year is my first year going freelance, and I've actually had people have sort of said, "Oh, you're available." It's like, yes, good, right. And I've had lots of things come up, so I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of people. So yeah, it's all good.
I know you're not
Very
allowed
cool.
to give. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I know you're not allowed to give any secrets away of stuff that's on now, but if you're looking back at some of the stuff you've worked on, and I know you worked on some crazy things, what were some of the things where somebody gave you something and you're like, oh, how do I do this?
I've got something that I'm working on soon where I've got to make multiple copies of somebody's face. But as I needed to create a negative rather than a positive to mold off, so I'm sort of pulling things from that. That's something I'm working on next week. Working on Virgo for the horoscopes, the original horoscopes anthology, when Tony Martin sort of comes up with some crazy requests.
Libra.
Libra, that was it. There's some crazy. Well, this is the thing. I remember sitting on the sofa during lockdown and getting a phone call from Tony, who is insane as he is lovely, and getting asked, "Can you make a 6-foot foreskin?" And my wife is sitting next to me, going, "Did I just hear right?" The other end of the phone, and it's like, "Can I do it? I don't know. Will I try? Damn straight, yes, absolutely." Who doesn't want to take on that challenge of doing that? And so, yeah, I mean, I do a lot of wound work and things like that, which is, it's out of the kit stuff. But when we had working on Vidoeshop 2 and the bits and pieces that when the copying doesn't quite work out and things like that, and they sort of said, "Oh, just have free reign," and I was like, "Oh, don't tell me that," because so coming up with creating little sphincters and making nipples and things like that, and my wife walks into my little workshop shed at the bottom of the garden and says, "What are you making?" "I'm making sphincters," and she's like, "Going, okay, and I married you. Damn. Is there any post clause in this that could get me out of it, please?" But yeah, that's one of the benefits of having cats. If you ever need a sphincter model, they are really on hand to just sort of like, "Oh, look, there you go." Yeah, so doing things like that. It's I really should do more sculpting. I really should. I've got some strange ideas that I want to start practicing on and just come up with some weird stuff. Just surreal stuff that is kind of to get it out of my system. I'm very much of the belief that when you have an idea, get it out of your system onto paper, into clay or paint or whatever you need to do, and then it allows new ideas to bubble up, whether they're good ideas, but it gives you room. Sort of like the Homer Simpson principle of every time I put one idea in, one idea comes out the other side. So it just helps. Just like, I've got a pile of ideas written down on paper somewhere, and I don't know what to do with them all. But I'll get around to looking at all of those.
Have you ever had an idea that was just something that was internal that was then able to be used, where someone has given you free reign?
Not yet, but there are. I mean, the thing is that very often I'm doing a lot of things with wounds and things like that. I mean, there was the thing with sorry, I correct myself actually. Vidoeshop 2 and Vidoeshop 1, I believe, Elliot the zombie. I ended up sort of kind of writing this entire backstory that somehow he'd got a dildo caught in his mouth, and the reason why he has a bulge in one cheek is because he sort of bit the rest off, but there's a bit wedged in the side of his mouth, so he has this sort of end poking out of his cheek. They didn't say no, so I do take orders. I will if somebody says to me, "For God's sakes, no, don't do that," I will stop. But if you give me free reign, I will do some weird old stuff. There's all sorts of ideas that are sort of bubbling up, and I saw things like The Last of Us. That set my brain alight with the wonderful ideas that they did for that, and I love that organic nature hits back body horror crossover. I just think I find a lot of the scientific articles and things like that, I find them absolutely fascinating, and it just makes my brain light up to think that if, whatever we think we can imagine is weird, Mother Nature's beaten us to it. When and you think about some of the stuff that goes on in the deep depths of the sea, and if you could try, that's the kind of ideas I look at and sort of try and take inspiration from and want to pull into things that I do and to give to filmmakers. But given a budget and a bit of time, I'll come up with the wackiest stuff. I've just got to find somebody with the budget and the plenty of time. But yeah, I mean, also your collaborators as well. They can really help elevate a project and elevate ideas. Because as a very talented SFX prop maker and makeup artist and designer, Jason J. Lowe says every day is a school day. Keep learning, keep trying something new, and all these ideas will be harvested and used and integrated. And I've got some ideas that keep bubbling up, and I'm sort of thinking, oh, okay, I must that's another one for the list of things I want to try and achieve and things like that. So it's nothing ever goes to waste.
That's always good. When you first started out, I know you've done a lot of like you said, it was wound kind of work. When you first started out, did you know, okay, I need to make sure I have like this kind of stuff in my kit because you can use this all the time, or was it that learn every day you end up getting tons of new things?
I got a very good grounding because I did my what we call our city and guild. So I did my level 2, which was meant to sort of teach me the groundwork for makeup, because being a cisgendered guy from the born in the 70s, I didn't do a lot of makeup, things like that. So I kind of hoped it would teach me how to do it, and no, they taught me all the health and safety stuff for doing a spray tan. God, yes, I've had a spray tan. No, I didn't like it. No, I wouldn't repeat it. And thank God they didn't go into waxings, because no way I'm getting that done. But yeah, so when I did my level 3, my City and Guilds level 3, that was in theatrical makeup and things like that. And they sort of taught us about doing flat molds, and they taught us about various bits and pieces. And then they mentioned about this sculpt gel, which comes in is platinum silicon gel that you 2-part mixture, and you mix it up, and then you can muck around with it and things like that. And that's my go-to, because quite often on projects I don't necessarily. I mean, I could go out and buy appliances by the dozen, but to be quite honest with you, I like to have the freehand flying by the seat of my pants thing of creating scars and cuts and things like that, because then I can actually, rather than it being not knocking the pre-cooked stuff, it's fantastic and somebody's done a beautiful job with it, but I just like to have that freedom to make it a bit more gnarly and add something to it. So sort of cutthroats, it's not a nice simple thing, it's a real gaping bit with there's a sort of a kind of a hesitation mark or a cut where they sort of the killer pulls a bit and it just bounces off a bone and things like that. It's the danger of having an imagination, is that you start writing the story for your it's like, can you cut their throat? Yes, but why do I cut their throat? How is just cut the throat, please? It's just like, yeah, okay, guys, okay. So yeah, but yeah, it's I was given a very good grounding by the tutors at North Kent College over in Dartford, and they were remarkably tolerant. I was the only guy in the class, and was also one of the oldest people in the class. So when it came to sort of, we've got to do body painting, And it's like, you really need me? Yes, we need. Everybody needs to do it. So there is a group of about probably about 10, 12 teenagers, late teenagers, who are now traumatized by the sight of me being body painted. But we all have to muck in. We there was no getting around it. Just because there was a bloke and they were all girls, it doesn't mean I don't have to stand there in my pants being painted. So but that's training for you. It's just one of those things. But yes, they gave me a very good grounding, and I sort of I think they were generous towards me. I've got so much. I've learned so much from being on set with people. And being set, the first film I ever worked on, I thought I was going on as an assistant. I thought, I'll be cleaning brushes, fetching things, doing all that lot what somebody else does. And their makeup artist flaked on them. And so it was sort of like, okay, you're doing all the makeup. So it's like, yeah, pardon me. And it's one of those things you learn damn fast when you people, there's not an excuse. There's not a way around this. It's just we need to get something done. And it's like, okay, then let's do the best we can, make the best movie we can, come up with the best ideas we can. And there was what is now something of a go-to thing for me was taking somebody's eye out. I did that first time on that, and it was a very patient actor who I was doing that to, and she was sort of like, "You know what you're doing? Oh yeah. It's all right. I'll protect your eyes. Thanks." So that was sort of just you learn as you go, and necessity is the mother of invention, and you just find a way of doing it, with whatever you got in your kit. So it's
So when you were doing your levels, was taking an eye out or building a 6 foot foreskin?
no, that was
Those were not part of the
very
curriculum.
strangely. The City and Guilds haven't got round to the need to build a 6 foot foreskin. I think there should be almost an ingenuity test incorporated into training for anyone who works in film. I honestly think that anybody who goes straight from university or courses or whatever, and they go straight into big productions, they're tremendously lucky. Don't get me wrong, they are very lucky people to do that, and I'm sure they earn very good money doing it. But there is nothing like being the makeup artist on set, or one of two people, and you've got to innovate, and you've got to find a way of doing something, or having a director come to you and say, I want to do this. I had one where a film where somebody wanted to have somebody's guts ripped out, and they barely had the budget to pay for me to go there and do the standard makeup. So I came up with some stuff, and then they were sort of saying, well, how would we film this? And I was thinking, hang on a minute, I'm not a DOP, but okay. Thinking back on all the movies I've ever watched and thinking, well, there's a cheat and a cheap way of doing this. And so I said to them, well, if you do it like this, this, and this, you get, and then it's all part of the edit. Because filmmaking is an utterly collaborative medium, you do have to sort of say to them, well, although this doesn't, your DOP's got a beautiful shot, it's about how you edit that together. I have utmost respect for editors. I think they make or break a film. You can have wonderful ideas on paper, you can have a fantastic DOP, but if the pacing's wrong or anything like that, then that wonderful effect that you managed to cobble together from 2 paper cups, a piece of string, and some ladies' hosiery, it's just sort of it ends up looking like that. Whereas a good editor can turn it into something that's just like, go, wow, that's turned my stomach, or it has the shock value. I mean, you look at the likes of Sam Raimi, he didn't have a huge budget for Evil Dead, but they found ways of doing stuff. You know, strapping a camera to a plank of wood and running through the forest with it. I mean,
It's pretty
nobody.
great.
It works brilliantly. You know, have you got a steady cam? A what? I've got a plank of wood, some stress, and some you know, zip ties. Let's go with it. Let's make this work. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But yeah, I do. I was blessed to work with some, taught by some very good people, and thrown into the deep end by some sympathetic and generous directors who have sort of let me go a bit crazy and do some stuff. And I worked things out on the fly on set before. Now I had to do a swollen eye, and it was like, how the hell am I doing that? And I just okay, and I'll find a way.
How did you? I gotta know.
It was another one of my sculpt gel creations, but it was just sort of creating it, sort of building it up in layers, so that you know I started out with something small, and once that is cured, okay, I'm going to add a bit more onto that, and I can put another layer onto it, and just to create this really nasty swollen eye after somebody. A woman had taken, it was in Burnt Flowers, and there's one of the actors, she takes a really nasty beating from I think it's from the lead protagonist, and yeah, and so she had this nastily swollen eye that had been, because she'd been used as a punching bag, really. And yeah, it's kind of one of the mainstays of horror, is, you know, that certainly in the past, that women were on the receiving end of a lot of very nasty behaviour. It's quite nice now that women are being given more agency and actually are going out there and, you know, chopping men up and things like that. Not just, you know, not just your I spit on your graves, but, you know, actually making women, giving them empowerment and a real strength, so that they're not sort of like eye candy or victims. So, but that's just, you know, it's things have eventually evolved, and I think it's generally because also horror has garnered such a large female fan base now, is that you get, you know, women don't want to be the passive recipients of brutal horror. They want to be an active part of it. And who says guys can't be dicks? And, you know, and be the one that the killer's stalking. It's, you know, why not? Let's be original.
Yeah. But yeah, no, like my generation had Ripley and things
Yeah.
like that. Like we had badass 80s women who were killing everything, and it was great.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I suppose, yeah, I was too young to see Alien the first time round, and I saw Aliens later on. But it was because I was such a nervous child. I loved science fiction. I loved that, but things like V, if you remember that wonderful 1980s series where the aliens are, spoiler alert, eating your hamster. I don't mean that in a dubious double entendre way. They were genuinely eating your hamster. But yeah, they were. That scared the living daylights out of me, and I couldn't watch horror. It was only when I was about 16, 17, I was dating somebody who was big into horror, and she kind of got me reading Dean Koontz and people like that. Which, bearing in mind, this was the late 80s, early 90s, was when Dean Koontz was just really on the up. And I got into horror. I sort of thought, okay, big deep breath, watch horror movies, and actually, yeah, they're just really good fun. I do have to thank her for taking me to see the original uncut version of Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer, at the Theatre Clwyd in North Wales, and walking out of that absolutely shell-shocked. But it's much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre has a fearsome reputation, but what's shown on screen is very effective, but it's not half of what people think is being shown. and Henry, a lot of it is, it's again, you're kind of shown, and obviously it is an incredibly powerful film, but there is still stuff. But yeah, so yes, thank you to the woman in question for getting me into horror, because breaking me out from being just a sci-fi nerd into a horror nerd as well, so I can be twice as tedious at dinner parties. So yeah,
Depends on the dinner.
it does depend on the dinner. I mean, bless my wife now. I send her if she's not on set, and a big shout out to Claire Gent, who is the most awesome makeup assistant, come runner, come production assistant, come everything else. I send her shots of stuff that I've done, and it's always a great benchmark when I get, oh my god, that's disgusting, back as a reply, because it's like, oh good, I've hit the marker then. It's just like, if it doesn't turn my wife's stomach, I know I'm doing something wrong. So
has that marker moved with time? Did it start out as like, oh, it's sphincters, and now it's like, pulling guts out of an eyeball?
she's used to the eyeball fetish, which I don't know where that came from. But yeah, I don't know if I'm trying to push the boundaries. I think Claire acts as a fantastic barometer, because she's open-minded enough that she's not going to be just, the first, oh, I've got a little splash of blood, oh my god, I'm so squeamish, I can't handle it. And by the same token, she's not an utter gorehound who will go, yeah, just ladle more on. Claire is a happy medium of, is this good enough? Is this strong enough? And, therefore it works. So, yeah, I'm very lucky to have her backing me up, sometimes quite literally helping me clean people up and things like that, because she's like, no, I leave the makeup to you, but the cleanup, we all want to get out of the house. We all want to get out and go home and wrap. So let's clean these guys up, and we'll get it done super quick.
Do you find you touched on the fact that I think with Henry, and then also with the editing where things are done that make it look more real or more, however, the theme of the mood of the movie, right? And do you find that, especially with makeup and effects, I guess the worst question ever, but do you find that the imagination, leaving it up to the person's imagination, makes things more scary?
It's the greatest tool that any filmmaker has in their arsenal, especially when it comes to horror and science fiction, is if you get your audience to invest in the film and the ideas and what you're trying to show them, their imagination is the greatest virtual effects machine in the world. And I am all for harnessing that. I would say show less, hint more, and they will do all the work for you. They have an unlimited budget in their brain, and they can do, if you push them in a direction and you give them a good hard shove, they will keep staggering on with that, and they will remember it as being far more extreme. And especially when you're talking about low budget filmmaking, but I think this is a rule that should apply to the Hollywood directors and the movie makers. It's like, less is more. It's always been my mantra on these things. It's not that I don't think that people make the most incredible makeup. I mean, you think about people like Rob Bottin doing The Thing, which pushed the boundaries so with the animatronics and the puppetry and things like that. They really, there was nothing that you needed to imagine. It was there on screen. But then you look back on a film like Alien, the original, and you'd think, how much of the alien do you actually see right up until the end? You don't. It's all in the shadow. It's all in the interaction with the human. And we can all understand fear. We can all understand these things. And so I think I'm very much of the school of thought that says, get your audience on board, get them involved, and they will thank you for it, and they will create some absolutely horrific things and have nightmares about horrific things, because you've hinted at it. And yeah, I mean, especially for low budget filmmakers, harness your audience, use them, because they're savvy customers, and especially with horror fans, they're a wonderfully dedicated, devoted tribe who want to be scared, who want to have something, who want their imagination to be to have a blowtorch taken to it, and and they're willing to invest and go with you. They will forgive you a lot of sins for that. So yeah, it is very much, and edit it to hell, keep it tight, show them little, make them fill in the gaps for you. But yeah, I mean, as I say, I'm not one to knock the great creators of our time, the Stan Winstons and the Kurtz and KNB and people like that. They do amazing stuff. When you don't have their budget and they don't have the investment of those sorts of people, then you can still do some pretty impressive stuff. I'm not one to knock VFX, but sometimes I think VFX can work better as a tool to enhance what's being shown, rather than needing to be the tool itself. I think we went down that route a bit too much in the 90s, where suddenly it was like, oh, we're going to do everything digitally.
Right.
And you're sort of like, well, that's great, but I always end up sort of coming out there grumbling about some film, and it's like, the physics didn't work right. There's something about having a physical interaction between a guy in a rubber mask and a person that is, because their eye line is perfect, and they're reacting. If they're half decent actors, they're reacting in a way that's really genuine. I mean, you don't have to do what Ridley Scott did with Alien and not tell them that the chest burst is going to come out beforehand, just so you can get that look on Veronica Cartwright's face when she goes, which is, obviously that works sometimes, but that's a one-take wonder. You set that up, and you're never going to get that reaction again. But I think it is. You look at people like Ridley Scott, who have created marvelous films, and used technology in incredible ways. But he's also an old school director in that he understands that the reaction and the physical interaction actually helps things.
I'm curious now. Actually, one of the things that's a bit of a pet peeve for me is the CGI blood. It bothers me because it doesn't get on anything.
No.
I was gonna ask. Yeah, what do you
hate it? It really winds me up when you see CGI blood splatters and things like that. It's sort of like, you got an SFX team on set. I'm sure they got some tubing and some hypos, so just rig it. And it's the physics of it. It splatters better. It flies better. You're not trying to theorize where it's coming from, because it is coming from
somewhere.
It's physically there. You've captured it on film. So yeah, I mean, as I say, I'm not one to knock the talents of the VFX industry, and God knows they employ a lot of people, and all power to them. But I do think there are places for VFX, and there's places for just doing something physically. And I think personally, I would always say do it physically, because your audience will appreciate that, and they won't have to. It won't. I had this theory. I posited this when I was working as a journalist. It's like, don't make your audience have to do any more work than they really have to. If you are trying to get something into a newspaper, give the journalist all the stuff that they need, so that they don't have to do any more work, because everybody essentially at heart is a little bit lazy. So don't make your audience, they've come with you, they've bought into the story, they've got this fantastic concept and everything like that, and then you're sort of saying to them, believe in this fake blood that's just come splashing up as well. And it's sort of like, I'm juggling a lot of balls here, and you're throwing another ball at me, which you don't need to do. You could just go, here's some tubing, there's some poor makeup artist lying on the floor waiting for their cue to go. And yeah, it requires a setup. But then again, making stuff with VFX, it's not cheap, and it's not, it still takes time and money and things like that. And I'm sure tubing corn syrup and whatnot and food coloring is going to be a lot quicker and cheaper to do than somebody painstakingly drawing dots of blood squirting out of a wound or something like that. So it's just unnecessary. Give me your budget. Don't give it to those guys. Wetter's got enough money already.
How do you feel when you're sitting in a room such as Horror on Sea, which I was able to attend, and I got to see kind of everybody's reactions to everything? But how do you like sitting in front of, in a room full of people that are watching your work?
It's as nerve-wracking as hell. Because I know it's difficult, because when it's difficult watching your own work back, because you know what you did. But you do have the benefit of being you're watching something, and then but because it's a collaborative thing, how the lighting has contributed to things like that. So you do get to see it from a different perspective. How the cameraman's captured things and things like that. But also you are sort of sitting there, not as much as the director, who obviously has the overall vision, but there is a certain amount of you sitting there chewing your nails going, I really hope people are grossed out by that, or they find that funny, or what have you. And it's because you don't want your little bit of the puzzle to not fit right. You want it to be a seamless part of everything else. Vidoeshop 2, I was the fortunate person to be making zombie balls, and honestly, that was done on set, with all the chaos that's going on as usual. And people sort of coming in, can you touch up my makeup? Yeah, hang on a minute, I'm just dunking my balls. And just trying to make things like that. But you want it to be, as I say, you don't want to break the illusion. You don't want to make the audience work harder because your bit of work wasn't up to snuff. You want it, and so you're as invested as everyone else is. And, as the actors are and things like that. So it's a lovely feeling, and you feel as proud as punch to sort of think, wow, something that I've worked on is now out there. It is part of perpetuity. We're going to be, who knows, in centuries to come, they will dig out the Blu-ray of Vidoeshop Tales of Terror 2 and go, you see this masterpiece, sod that Orson Welles crap with this. It's okay, this is actually, of course, until part 3 came out, and then we rewrote the history books. Is that, because you're invested in it like that, you want everybody to, you don't want to break the illusion. You want your part to, and anybody who has an artistic leaning or an artistic passion, I mean, I can't speak for everyone. Maybe there are some really super confident artists out there who just go, yeah, of course I do wonderful stuff. I suffer profoundly from imposter syndrome and always sort of think, I hope it's good enough. And I send people out something I was working on last night, and they sort of said to me, can you do this? And I was like, yes, I can, but you're giving me a very open brief. So I'll do something. And I sent them out to have a look at does this meet the director's vision? Is this what they're looking for? And I just kept getting back, yep, they're good, they're fine, everything like that. And so no, don't. I never want anybody to mollycoddle me and sort of say, yes, it's good. Why? Because you're a really nice guy. I mean, they might say I'm an absolute whatever, but I hope they don't send my work back.
I doubt it.
Because you just think, he's an arse. Send his work back anyway, just for the shits and giggles. But no, I always want it to be what I have in my head and what the director has in their head, because a lot of nano budget movies you don't have a lot of time. You don't have a production designer sort of giving you sketches of everything that they want. You don't have a lead artist who sits there and ponders and scrutinizes and comes up with these things. It's on the fly. You always want it to match what their vision is, but then again, there's a certain amount of they're juggling a lot of balls, and you're just there to do a job. But then again, you want it to fit the brief. So yeah, it's and if you're not, somebody said to me, if you're not nervous about your work and about getting it right, maybe you're not. I don't know. You're in the wrong place, because you should be nervous about what you're doing. You should have that passion, because that passion and that need and that desire to make something that looks really good and convinces the audience, that should be your driving force. If it's not, have you thought about accountancy? Because there's anything artistic, there is no 2 + 2 = 4. There's always an element of risk, and yeah, as I say, you suffer from imposter syndrome, and you sort of worry and worry and worry, but then you see it on screen and people love it, and you just go, oh, I didn't break the illusion, I didn't spoil anything, I didn't push people out of their bubble. So
what's more nerve-wracking though? So in that you talked about your effects and the makeup, but you also were on screen in the movie.
That was I mean my on-screen debut.
You were
Yeah.
fantastic. You were the best
It was
Rick
wonderful.
ever.
Oh no, the best thing ever was God, his name suddenly escaped my mind. The mail ship cast member.
Yes, Mika. He was
No,
what was
in the background.
Will
Will
was amazing.
Will was killing me every damn time he came. I mean, I will all credit to Will. Damn, he does that weird spangly lycra stuff oh so well. Men, be prepared to be turned by this vision in lycra, because honestly, he's hot.
Will was
the idea of being on screen was I sort of opened my big mouth and put my foot in it. I said, "Oh yeah, I'll do something like that." And then they sort of said, "Okay, this is how you go." And it's sort of like, well, thank Christ there's no lines to learn, because I don't. But yeah, it was just sort of trying to channel my ennui and sort of be sort of like tedious emo kid thing. So it was great fun. It was great fun doing it on set with a cigarette hanging, trying to keep a cigarette dangling from my lip, given I don't smoke. So it's sort of like, this is a new skill. How can I channel ennui on the scale that the French do? And it's like, okay, I shall hang a cigarette off my lip, and we should do it like that. But yeah, it was great. And when people laughed, I can't lie, that's a huge ego boost.
Yeah,
we all love to be. I'm a performer at heart, even if I stay on the correct side of the camera for the most part. If anybody's dumb enough to want me to do more roles, then I'm sure I can make a hash of that. But yeah, it was great fun, and it worked again thanks to the brilliance of the directors and the edit, and that was, I mean, Lauren, you did manage to take that whole sequence was wonderful. Take credit as a writer, take credit for your performances and the wonderful bonkers stuff. But again, it was, I I had a teeny part in what was a magnificent production by so many great people. Lawrence doing, channeling Rod Serling, and everyone. I mean,
We
Mika
got so lucky.
is yeah. But then again, your performance as well, because it was that sort of, it was just so much. It had almost airplane-esque levels of throw everything at the screen. And whenever if I ever cite Airplane as sort of like you're getting near the benchmark for that, I always take that with great pride, because honestly one of my favorite films ever. Yeah, so yes, I think I was fortunate enough to have a brief appearance, although I have to say I did spot Ian, the genuine sound man, standing in as me.
Oh, you could tell.
The fact, well, no, it's just because Ian's that much taller than me. He's got several inches of height on me. And he was really good. But I was like, oh, hello. Poor guy trying to fit into. I mean, thank God I'm a big guy and I wear a big shirt. But I mean, Ian is a big chap and a big talent as well. So yeah, I did. I mean, I spotted that because I was like, hang on, did I do that bit? Oh no, I didn't. There we go. But it's only because I was there and I knew what happened. But yeah, it was. I suppose it's the thing. I'm very lucky to have had a tiny part in something which was really great. If I had a tiny part in something that absolutely stunk to high heaven, then I'd be sort of going, whew, I can't wait for that to be forgotten. But I'm sure this is the Vidoeshop as a whole is a wonderful concept and a wonderful idea, and it's evolving so brilliantly. And the craziness, because I remember being we were all spitballing ideas about the aliens and things like that, and it was just sort of, you could never look them in the eye. Why? Well, because it's it's the clitoris, which no man in the Western Hemisphere can ever find. So it was just I'm very fortunate. It's sort of like being part of Citizen Kane or something like that. It's that if you're a bit player in something great, then that elevates you. If you're a bit player in, I don't know, Rubber, the film about a homicidal tire going on a rampage, then you're playing second fiddle to a piece of vulcanized rubber.
Which sounds way cool. Like, this is the trouble with bad films, is it sounds brilliant.
Yes, this is it. I mean, believe me, I've got a lot of bad films in my head that somebody will hate me for casting them in if I ever did make them. Yeah, it's sort of like they'll be like, okay, oh god, that was the nadir of my career, and I've done some stinkers. But yeah, it's to be part of something brilliant is wonderful, and to hear the audience's reaction and the laughter was such an ego boost. And I'm thankful I threw my hat in the ring, and quite literally by turning up in a silly Australian hat, and thankful for the opportunity to do it. It was a pleasure being on that side of the camera.
That's awesome. You died. This sounds like a weird compliment, but you died beautifully. It was so well done, because that's what gets the laugh, is the way you die.
It's such a wonderfully. I mean, if you're gonna die with some style and in a way. It's sort of like, I was hacked to death. Yeah, join the queue. I died by queef. Come on, then. Who else has done that? Come on. I should be going down in the in film almanacs, when they sort of say the way different people have died over the years, explosions, gunshots, blah 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 blah. And then it's sort of like, it's like the quiz show Pointless, sort of try and come up with something that nobody else came up with, what's the most unusual way somebody died? And it's like died by queef. It's like one person. It's like, damn it! They shouldn't have asked Alex to be part of the audience poll on that. But yeah, if you want to, it's a unique way to die, and I look forward to the day that somebody else manages to write that into a film, so that they could go sort of like, well, we're going to compare the people how somebody died, in the original and greatest Vidoeshop Tales of Terror 2, and this hackneyed copy and rip-off by Martin Scorsese's rip-off of Vidoeshop Tales of Terror 2. His death by queef was just frankly derivative, and so yeah. There you go, Martin. I've set the bar high. Get De Niro in there. See if he can die by queef like me.
Not a chance.
Actually, I was picturing Pesci the whole time. When he said it, I was thinking Pesci's the guy who could do the die by queef, but with De Niro, so that wouldn't be a bad upgrade.
I'm now worried that I've set myself up for a fall now, and then so many, David Tennant does his National Theatre, the first death by queef on the National Theatre on the Broadway stage, and it's yes, you see, that's what they should have done in Vidoeshop Tales of Terror 2. Invasion of Studio 69 is like David Tennant. He brings such gravitas to the whole gassing by vaginal discharge. I don't know.
See, this is why we need more women writers. Nobody thought death by queef until now.
No, this is the thing. This is that women come at things from a wonderfully different perspective. Generally laughing up their sleeves at men. And I like action films and horror movies and things like that where women are more, they're stronger. I mean, you look at some of the great actors now who are coming through and are being recognized for their acting chops and are not just the arm candy to somebody. Just before I went away to Germany, I sat down and watched Atomic Blonde with Charlize Theron going around kicking 7 shades out of everyone. And it was just fantastic. It was just because it was, you've got a woman who takes a punch, delivers a punch, and is on top of her game. And I love that. And, she's direct. I mean, when Damsel came out, and suddenly people go, lots of sort of Gen Z or whatever generation we're on, generation who cares, started saying, it's good to see a woman out there. And it's like, yeah, we kind of got that covered. And for quite a while, look back at Sigourney Weaver, look back at, this is not new, but you can actually, women can perfectly lead a film. In fact, I think more women should lead films. They should be given the proper leading role and be the action hero, be the heroine who sort of pulls the guy's fat out of the fire. Because, to be quite honest, women will go and see a film with women in them because women don't have that whole thinking with their nether regions all the time thing that men have. Men will go and see a film, it's action and, it's great. And there's that whole, latent homosexual attraction I have towards that lead actor. But, and then there's a hot woman in it too. Yeah. There's a hot woman who's leading the charge on this and is, the women will flock to see it because, hey, sisterhood. But also, and the guys will flock to see it just because, I wouldn't mind her kicking my ass. Why are we not tapping into this whole, you're more effectively tapping into 50% of your audience. So let's give women the proper respect and authority that they deserve in taking the lead on films. You look at Midsummer. There's a film there that Florence Pugh leads and holds everything. Everything revolves around her, and it's a fantastic movie. would it have been as good if they had, one of the male characters being? No. It's, because she's sacred in that whole thing. And I think it's great that more women are writing and producing things and being as central to the whole film, so that they can actually do that and say, I'm, this female character is important, and it's getting out there, and it's working its way through. You still get these, a lot of films are male dominated. I can't see Jason Statham playing second fiddle to even the most amazing action woman, but we are getting better. And kudos to Jason Statham; he has got a good sense of humor. You see him things like Spy, which is a wonderful, wonderful film, and he just takes the piss out of himself all the whole way through. So why not?
I'm aware we're a bit over the hour. I apologize, but I want to make sure we talk about the stuff that you're doing now, so that people can know what to look for in the future, so they can see more of your work. So what do you have that's coming out in the next year?
I've been working with MJ Dixon on a new. It's almost like a serial, is the best way I can describe it. He's doing sort of like is sort of a continuing narrative across a number of pieces. I know he's got a lot of other projects coming out later this year, or that he's working on this year, hopefully for production next year. I'm very fortunate to be working with Martin Payne on something which sounds delightfully surreal and warped and hints of Les Jeux Sans Visage, which is a wonderful thing. I'm working with yourself and Tony. I'm very fortunate to be working on my preferred genre of body horror, in sort of working on that. So so I've got somebody wants me to do some fight injuries for an MMA movie, so that's going to be. I'm just really blessed and fortunate to have a lot of people want to sort of give me an opportunity to work with them, and I open to everyone and anything, and it doesn't have to be horror. It's what I'm better at. So, but yeah.
Do you mind if I ask? I don't know how. I know some people are very secretive about stuff like this, but do you have any of the titles for any of MJ's work or Martin's work, or so that people can keep an ear out?
MJ's piece, it's at the moment it's going under the name of Hexagon, and Martin Payne's work, Matrushka. So I think it's the nesting Russian dolls.
Ooh, that's cool.
Which has got, this is the thing, I love that sort of, I know some people use it as a dirty word now, the A24 elevated artistic horror, which, A24 are kind of gone off the boil, having made great things like Hereditary and Midsummer and things like that. They've sort of maybe picked up the scripts that are sort of quirky. I'm not looking at you, Death of a Unicorn, at all. Sorry.
No,
great idea, not the best execution. So many places you could improve that film. But yeah, I love that whole, because I'm a body horror fan, I worship at the temple of David Cronenberg and all those, wonderful people who are doing strange things. I mean, we look at Brandon Cronenberg. He's working, he's sort of following in his father's early footsteps, and coming up with wonderful original ideas. So that's the kind of thing I want to be. Ideally, I want to be involved in. So I'm trying to write some stuff for that, in that vein. Trying to come up with original. There's no original ideas anymore. We've used them all up, but trying to come up with original things and different elements of horror, and reacting to our where the world is and where civilization is in the early years of the 21st century. There's some horrific stuff going on, and I think it provides an abundance of metaphors for us to explore. So I think something out there for. We can do some interesting things. There's a lot more interesting ideas out there. And if people have those interesting ideas and need a makeup artist, please give me a call. Because I am cheap.
That's a very inspiring note to end on, actually. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you.
No, thank you.
So much.
Thank you for letting me ramble on as I have done. But yeah, it's great getting a chance to sort of talk like this and think about, horror is a big thing. I love horror movies in all sorts of shapes and forms, but I love original horror. You can go back and watch the sequels to films and things like that, but when you look back on Nightmare on Elm Street, they came up with lots of wonderfully original ideas. Eventually, the fuel ran out, but they at least kept pushing at it and trying to come up with a new, crazy way of doing something. And that's what I think filmmakers should be doing, especially horror filmmakers. We should be reacting to our times with a suitably jaundiced eye and sort of putting on the sunglasses like they did in They Live. and showing some of that stuff up, even if it's in a subtle metaphor that people don't necessarily get. I think we should all put on those sunglasses and see what's going wrong, and then let's poke fun at it and maybe change some things by doing that.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. A beautiful note to end on. Thank you so much for your time and for being so generous with your stories. We've had a lovely conversation. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you to our listeners. This
Yes.
has been the London Horror Movie Club.
If you want to share your thoughts about this episode, please head to our Facebook or YouTube pages. We're grateful to Kukurbit, who made our music. Thank you for listening, and please join us next time for the London Horror Movie Club.